You've probably been told your perfectionism is a strength, a sign of your high standards, your intelligence, your relentless drive. You might have even listed it as your greatest weakness in a job interview. That classic, well-rehearsed humble brag that signals you're a dedicated, high-achieving performer. It's the socially acceptable way to say, I care too much, or I work too hard. But what if I told you that for many brilliant, capable, and driven people, it's not a strength at all? What if behind that polished exterior, it's a slow-acting poison, a hidden self-destruct button being pressed with every project, every goal, every new day? I used to think my obsession with getting everything exactly right, with being flawless, was the secret to my success. I believed it was the powerful engine propelling me forward, the very thing that made me valuable. In reality, it was the silent architect of my anxiety, the deep and unseen foundation of my burnout, and the insidious reason I constantly felt, deep down in a place I dared not look, like a complete and utter fraud. This isn't going to be a simple pep talk about the virtues of having high standards, no. This is a forensic examination of the devastating cost of chasing an illusion. It's about the intricate psychological trap that turns our greatest gifts into our heaviest burdens. A trap that a growing body of research suggests is ensnaring a massive number of us, with rates of perfectionism, particularly the most toxic kinds, continuing to rise at an alarming rate across generations. This is the dark side of perfectionism. And understanding its machinery, its origins, and its consequences, well, it might just be the most important thing you ever do to save yourself from yourself. Before we dive deeper, we need to draw a sharp, unblurrable line in the sand. There's a vast and crucial difference between healthy, adaptive striving and the toxic, maladaptive perfectionism that can systematically ruin lives. Healthy striving is about ambition, yes, but it's rooted in something positive. It's reaching for excellence, fueled by a genuine passion for growth, mastery, and accomplishment. It's flexible. It can find joy in the process itself. It understands intrinsically that mistakes and missteps are not just part of the process. They are the process. It's the musician who loves the challenge of a difficult piece and sees a flubbed note as feedback, not a failure. Maladaptive perfectionism, on the other hand, isn't about the love of the work or the joy of the climb. It's about the paralyzing fear of not being good enough. It operates from a place of deficit. It's a rigid, brittle, all-or-nothing mindset that whispers a constant, corrosive mantra. If it's not perfect, it's a complete failure. A single mistake doesn't feel like a learning opportunity. It feels like a final, damning verdict on your worth as a human being. The musician with maladaptive perfectionism doesn't hear the 99 notes they played beautifully. They're haunted by the one they missed. This isn't a quest for success. It's a desperate, frantic flight from the terror of being seen as flawed. To better understand this, psychologists often break this destructive trait down into 3 distinct flavors. As I describe them, see if you recognize yourself or people you know in one or more of these profiles. First, there's self-oriented perfectionism. This is the classic, internally driven perfectionist. You're the one who sets impossibly high standards for yourself. You're your own harshest, most unforgiving critic. You're the artist who can't declare a painting finished because one brushstroke feels wrong. The writer who rewrites the same sentence for an hour, deleting and retyping until the words lose all meaning. Or the entrepreneur who, despite record profits, can only focus on the one metric that fell short. While this internal drive can sometimes correlate with high achievement, it's also a direct, non-stop flight to chronic stress, anxiety, and burnout because, well, the goalposts are always moving. Satisfaction is a mirage in the desert, always visible but never reachable. There's no done. There's only not good enough yet. Second, we have other-oriented perfectionism. This is when you turn that impossible, punishing standard outwards, projecting it onto everyone around you. You expect and demand perfection from your colleagues, your partner, your friends, your children. This can make you an incredibly demanding boss who fosters a culture of fear, or a constantly critical friend who leaves people feeling drained and inadequate. It corrodes relationships because you're holding others to a standard that's not only unfair but one that even you can't consistently meet. It creates a world where you feel perpetually let down by others, breeding resentment and isolation. But there's a third flavor, and it's arguably the most psychologically damaging. It's the one that researchers are most concerned about: socially prescribed perfectionism. This isn't about the standards you set for yourself or for others. No, this is the deep-seated, gut-level belief that other people have impossibly high expectations of you, and that you simply must meet them to be accepted, valued, or loved. You feel trapped by the perceived judgment of society, your parents, your boss, or even your friends. You live your life on a stage, performing for an audience that you imagine is just waiting for you to slip up. You believe your worth is entirely conditional on a flawless performance. This isn't just a fleeting feeling. No, it's a profound, crushing sense of pressure that has seen a dramatic 33% increase among young people in recent decades. And it's this specific form of perfectionism that research has most strongly and consistently linked to the most severe mental health consequences, including debilitating anxiety, deep depression, and even suicidal ideation. It's the feeling of being a puppet whose strings are held by the unseen hands of everyone else's expectations. Underneath all three of these flavors lies the same core engine: a relentless, tyrannical inner critic. It's that voice that never lets you celebrate a victory without immediately pointing out a minor, insignificant flaw. It's the voice that discounts praise as just people being nice, but magnifies even the mildest criticism into a scathing indictment of your entire being. It's the voice that ensures that even when you win, you don't actually feel like a winner. You just feel relief, a temporary stay of execution. The anxiety subsides for a moment, but it's not replaced by joy or pride, only by the quiet dread of the next trial, the next performance, the next opportunity to fail. This is the gilded cage of perfectionism. From the outside, it looks like a beautiful, successful, enviable life. But from the inside, it's a cold, lonely prison of fear, where the warden, the judge, and the executioner are all your own mind. So why do so many smart, capable, and talented people fall into this devastating trap? The origins are rarely simple, a complex web of temperament, biology, and experience. But they often trace back to a fundamental and flawed equation we learned to solve early in life. My performance equals my worth. For many, the roots are deeply embedded in the soil of childhood. Imagine a home where love and approval feel or are conditional. You get showered with praise and affection when you bring home a perfect report card, when you score the winning goal, when you perform flawlessly. But when you stumble, get a B instead of an A, miss the shot, or make a mistake, that affection and warmth seem to pull back. It might be replaced with overt criticism, or perhaps something more subtle, more confusing, like a palpable disappointment or a chilling emotional distance. You learn a dangerous lesson on a deep, pre-verbal level. To be loved and to be safe, I have to constantly prove that I'm worthy. My value is not inherent. It is earned through flawless execution. Your achievements stop being joyful expressions of your passion and curiosity, and instead become desperate, anxious bids for validation and safety. Perfectionism isn't born as a character trait, but as a brilliant, adaptive defense mechanism. a heavy suit of armor you forge to protect your vulnerable self from the perceived threat of criticism, rejection, or abandonment. Research consistently confirms that people who report having critical or demanding parents with exceptionally high expectations tend to show significantly more perfectionistic traits. This early programming, this core belief, well, it then gets supercharged and amplified by a culture that worships the myth of effortless genius. We are bombarded with images of success. We see the flawless final product. The blockbuster movie, the best-selling novel, the billion-dollar IPO. Not the years of messy, frustrating, gut-wrenching process it took to get there. Social media becomes a meticulously curated highlight reel of everyone else's supposed perfection, pouring rocket fuel on our natural human tendency for social comparison. We scroll through endless feeds of perfect bodies, perfect vacations, and perfect careers, and the gap between our messy reality and their polished fantasy, well, it feels like a personal failing. We start to truly believe that we are our achievements. And if that's true, then any failure isn't just a setback. No, it's a fundamental crisis of self, an existential threat. This creates the perfect breeding ground for what I call the unholy trinity of mental distress: anxiety, depression, and imposter syndrome. So let's start with anxiety. For the perfectionist, anxiety isn't just an event. It's the constant, draining background hum of their life. It's fueled by a chronic, pervasive fear of future failure. Your mind, it becomes a relentless prediction machine, always scanning the horizon for potential mistakes you might make, ways you could be judged, or, well, scenarios where you'll fall short. This often manifests as high-functioning anxiety. You appear successful and put together on the outside, but internally, you're battling a storm of relentless worry, rumination, and overthinking. You can't relax. You're haunted by the feeling that you're always just one misstep, one error, one bad decision away from total disaster. This takes a real physical toll, contributing to chronic stress, insomnia, headaches, and ultimately, complete burnout. Then comes depression. Maladaptive perfectionism and depression. They're locked in a deadly, self-perpetuating embrace. Perfectionists, you see, they chain their entire self-worth to achieving unrealistic, often unattainable goals. And since those goals are, by their very definition, nearly impossible, well, failure isn't just a risk, it's a statistical certainty. When that inevitable failure happens, it triggers a devastating cascade of brutal self-criticism, profound shame, and feelings of utter worthlessness. This is compounded by rumination, that toxic tendency to obsessively chew on your mistakes, replaying them in your mind on a loop, each time feeling the sting as if it were new. And this cycle, it doesn't just make you feel bad, It actively carves the neural pathways of depression right there in your brain, making it easier and easier to fall into that dark place. And finally, the most insidious partner in this destructive dance: imposter syndrome. This is that persistent, nagging, internal fear that you'll be exposed as a fraud, that you don't deserve your accomplishments, despite all objective evidence of your competence and success. The cruel, paradoxical irony is that external success brings no relief. In fact, it only amplifies the fear. Each new achievement, each promotion, each accolade, it raises the stakes and intensifies the dread of being found out. This creates a vicious, exhausting cycle. You're assigned a task and immediately feel a wave of fear and anxiety. That fear leads to one of two responses: either extreme, obsessive over-preparation or debilitating procrastination, followed by a frantic, caffeine-fueled last-minute push. When you inevitably succeed through this sheer brute force, you don't feel competent. No, you just feel relief. You then discount the success, attributing it to external factors, thinking, I only pulled that off because I worked 100 hours and sacrificed my sleep and health. Or maybe I just got lucky this time. They don't know I have no idea what I'm doing. The success feels like a fluke, reinforcing that core belief that you're an imposter. And so, the next time a task comes along, the cycle of anxiety and self-doubt begins all over again, often with even greater intensity. A powerful psychological lens to understand this internal war is Carl Jung's concept of the shadow self. Jung believed that for every part of our personality we consciously embrace and show the world, our persona, there's a corresponding shadow that holds all the parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable, the traits we repress and deny, our fears, our insecurities, our anger, our perceived weaknesses. Perfectionism, when viewed through this lens, is a desperate, lifelong attempt to live as if we have no shadow. It's an attempt to create and maintain a persona of pure, flawless competence, light and strength. We convince ourselves and try to convince others that if anyone saw our shadow, our doubt, our messiness, our fear, they would immediately reject us. The great tragedy, according to Jung, is that by repressing this essential part of ourselves, we don't eliminate it. Instead, we give it immense, unconscious power. The unacknowledged shadow doesn't go away. It runs our lives from the background, projecting onto others, fueling our anxieties, and ensuring we can never, ever feel whole. The relentless pursuit of perfection isn't just stressful. It's an act of violence against the self, a severing of our own soul. If any of this is resonating with you, if you've ever felt that crushing weight of needing to be perfect, or that quiet, persistent fear of being found out, let me and the community here know in the comments. You don't have to share details, but just acknowledging that feeling, even with a simple "I can relate," can be a powerful first step. Your story matters, and it helps all of us feel less alone in this very human struggle. And if you're finding this valuable, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the psychology of a meaningful life. So if perfectionism is a gilded cage you've unknowingly built around yourself, how do you pick the lock? The answer isn't to try harder, to optimize more, or to find a new productivity hack. The answer is a radical, foundational shift in perspective. It's about giving yourself the permission you've denied yourself for so long. Permission to do the one thing the perfectionist fears most, to be human. To be, as Jung would say, complete, not perfect. There's an old philosophical saying that nothing comes from nothing. But for the perfectionist, maybe we should twist that. From perfection, nothing comes. Perfection is sterile. It's a dead end. It is a polished, finished stone. Imperfection, on the other hand, is fertile soil. It is where all growth, all learning, all art, and all connection happens. The journey out is about the slow, deliberate, and courageous practice of unhooking your self-worth from your performance. This isn't easy, and it's a lifelong practice, not a one-time fix. But there are powerful psychologically backed strategies that can light the way. The first and most crucial is to learn to challenge your inner critic. That harsh voice feels like it's telling you the absolute objective truth. It's not. It's a distorted, habitual thought pattern, a well-worn neural pathway that fires automatically. A practice from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, uses a simple but profound three-step process: catch, check, and change. First, catch the thought. You have to develop the mindfulness to notice when the critic pipes up. It's sneaky. Maybe it's after a small mistake at work, or when you get a piece of feedback. or even when you just look in the mirror. The thought might be a blanket statement, like, "I'm such an idiot," or "I'll never be good enough." The first step is just to notice it, to see it as a thought, not as a fact. Second, check the thought. Put it on trial. Interrogate it, like a skeptical lawyer. Is this thought 100% true? Is it an objective fact that because you made one mistake, you're a complete and utter failure for all time? What's the evidence against this thought? What have you done well? Would you ever, in a million years, say this to a friend you cared about? This step is about breaking the black and white, all or nothing thinking. That's the fuel for perfectionism. Third, change the thought. Now, this isn't about forced, toxic positivity. It's about replacing the harsh, unfair criticism with something more balanced, compassionate, and true. Instead of, "I'm completely incompetent," try something like, "I made a mistake on that one task, which is human. I'm feeling disappointed and frustrated right now, and that's okay. But I can learn from this and do better next time." You're not lying to yourself here. You're just correcting a cognitive distortion. The second strategy is to actively embrace the philosophy of good enough. Perfectionists live in a binary world of two options, perfect or failure. This is a false and crippling choice. In reality, most of life, and almost all success, happens in the vast, fertile, productive space of good enough. You must deliberately introduce this as a third option. Before starting a task, ask yourself, what would good enough look like here? This principle lets you reclaim your life from the analysis paralysis that perfectionism breeds. It's what allows you to finally start the project you've been avoiding, out of fear it won't be perfect. Done is so often better than perfect. Aiming for a B- on a project might actually make you more creative and successful than the person who is paralyzed by their need for an A+ and never gets started at all. This leads to the third and perhaps most transformative strategy, cultivating self-compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff, a leading researcher in this field, she defines self-compassion as the direct antidote to the harsh, brutal self-criticism of perfectionism. It's not self-pity or making excuses. No, it's about learning to treat yourself with the same kindness, care, and concern that you would instinctively give to a good friend who is struggling. It has three core components. The first is self-kindness, actively being gentle and understanding with yourself, instead of cold and critical when you fail or feel inadequate. The second is common humanity. It's about recognizing that failure, imperfection, and struggle, they're not signs that you're uniquely flawed. In fact, they're fundamental parts of the shared human experience. Everyone suffers. Everyone makes mistakes. And this actually connects you to others. Perfectionism, though, that just isolates you. The third is mindfulness. This means acknowledging your painful thoughts and feelings without being consumed by them. It's about holding your pain in awareness, with balance, rather than ignoring it or letting it completely take over your entire reality. Finally, we must return to the shadow. The ultimate path to healing, you see, is to integrate the shadow. The goal isn't to defeat or destroy the imperfect, messy parts of yourself. No, it's to turn toward them with curiosity and acceptance. Shadow work is about having the courage to acknowledge your vulnerabilities, your fears, your envy, your insecurities. You can start this process simply by being honest with yourself through journaling. Ask yourself, where do I feel the most pressure to be perfect? What do I most fear other people seeing in me? Then, you practice vulnerability in safe, trusted relationships. You share your struggles, and you start realizing that true, deep connection. It's built on authenticity, not on a flawless facade. When you do this, a truly remarkable thing happens. the shadow loses its terrifying power over you. By consciously bringing your flaws into the light of your own awareness, you realize they aren't fatal. They are simply part of the rich, complex, beautiful tapestry of who you are. By embracing your imperfection, you become whole. And in that wholeness, you find a deep, grounded resilience that the perfectionist, forever chasing a phantom, can never, ever know. We've been sold a dangerous and pervasive lie. And that lie says our value is conditional. It must be earned and re-earned every single day. That it's measured by our performance. And that perfection, well, that's the non-negotiable price of admission for a successful and worthy life. For smart, ambitious, and really driven people, this lie is particularly seductive. Why? Because it feels like a noble pursuit. But it leads, inevitably, it leads to a life of quiet desperation. A life defined by chronic anxiety, debilitating burnout, and ultimately, a hollow, lonely sense of being a fraud. The dark side of perfectionism is that it forces us to wage a silent internal war against our own humanity. The path to freedom isn't through finally one day achieving flawlessness. It's through the courageous day-by-day act of radical self-acceptance. It's in learning to catch and challenge the voice of the inner critic, in embracing the liberating power of good enough, and in cultivating the radical practice of self-compassion. It's about having the profound courage to turn towards your own shadow and realize that your wholeness, not your perfection, is the true and unshakable source of your strength. The goal isn't to stop striving for excellence, it's to stop suffering for it. It's to unhook your fundamental sense of worth from the volatile outcomes of your work, and to finally understand, deep in your bones, that you are enough. Right now, exactly as you are, not when you achieve the next goal, not when you fix every flaw, not when everyone approves of you, but now, imperfect, struggling, learning, and completely beautifully human. If this video has helped you see yourself or your struggles in a new light, please subscribe for more deep dives into building a more resilient and meaningful life. And if you know someone, a friend, a family member, a colleague, who you recognize is trapped on this relentless, unforgiving treadmill of perfection, consider sharing this with them. It might be the permission they've been waiting for, to finally give themselves a moment of grace, to finally step off. Thank you for watching.